You have 5 minutes to leave that seat before I classify you as a security issue. The words landed softly, almost politely, which made the silence around seat 2 a feel sharper than if they had been shouted. Marcus Bennett looked up from the thin blue folder resting across his knees and studied the woman standing beside him. Claire Whitmore wore the fitted Navy uniform of Crestline Airways, a silver name pin above one pocket, and the calm expression of someone accustomed to being obeyed before she finished speaking. Behind her stood Richard Holbrook, a white-haired businessman in an expensive charcoal coat, holding a leather briefcase and watching the exchange with the mild impatience of a man delayed by a problem he did not consider his own. Marcus glanced at his watch. The brushed steel face had followed him through 27 years of boardrooms, bankrupt suppliers, late-night negotiations, and the first day a company with 6 employees became one with more than 30,000. 5 minutes, he asked. Claire gave a measured nod. That's more time than most people get. Marcus closed the folder without changing his expression. Then let's see what 5 minutes changes. A few passengers nearby turned their heads. The first-class cabin was nearly full, quiet except for the low hum of the ventilation system and the muted clink of ice settling into glasses. Outside the oval window, baggage carts moved beneath a pale Atlanta morning, and the wing reflected a thin strip of sunlight. Everything looked ordinary. That was what made the moment feel so precise. Marcus sat alone in 2A, wearing a dark navy suit with no visible label, a white shirt without a tie, and polished black shoes that had already crossed 3 airport terminals that week. No assistant followed him. No security detail waited nearby. Nothing about him announced the title attached to his name. Claire looked down at the boarding pass in her hand. She had taken it from him 2 minutes earlier and had not returned it. His name was printed clearly. Marcus Bennett. Seat 2A. Crestline Airways, Flight 214. Atlanta to New York. There was no mistake. Mr. Holbrook is one of our most valued VIP customers, she said. We're making an operational accommodation. Marcus looked past her toward Richard. Was he assigned this seat? Claire's smile tightened by a fraction. We're not required to discuss another passenger's booking. I didn't ask about his booking, Marcus said. I asked whether he was assigned my seat. Richard shifted his briefcase from one hand to the other, but said nothing. Claire handed the boarding pass back as though the matter had already been settled. We have another seat available for you in the main cabin. Row 23, middle seat. Marcus took the pass and rested it on top of the folder. I purchased 2A, and we're asking for your cooperation. Her tone remained controlled, but something underneath it had changed. The request was no longer a request. Marcus noticed the younger flight attendant standing near the galley. Emily Carter had been watching from the moment Claire approached. Now her eyes moved from Marcus's face to the boarding pass and back again, as though a memory had almost surfaced. Claire stepped closer. Sir, I need an answer. Marcus looked once more at his watch. 4 minutes and 32 seconds remained. Then he leaned back in the seat he had paid for and said, You already have one. Claire held his gaze for a moment, waiting for discomfort to do what authority had not. Marcus remained still. The blue folder rested across his knees, his boarding pass centered neatly on top of it, and the second hand on his watch continued its quiet sweep. 4 minutes and 12 seconds remained. Behind Claire, Richard Holbrook cleared his throat. I was told the seat would be available, he said. His voice carried the confidence of someone accustomed to problems disappearing before they reached him. Claire turned toward him immediately. It will be Mr. Holbrook. Thank you for your patience. The warmth in her tone vanished when she faced Marcus again. Sir, we need to finish boarding. Marcus looked toward the open cabin door. 2 passengers were still placing bags in the overhead compartments. A family near the entrance waited while an employee checked a stroller tag. No one was being delayed by him. Not yet. Then finish boarding, he said. Claire drew a slow breath. Your refusal is creating an operational issue. My boarding pass says Seat 2A. We have explained the accommodation. You have explained who you value more. The words were quiet, but Emily Carter heard them from the galley. Her hand paused above a tray of bottled water. She looked at Marcus again, studying the calm line of his face and the gray beginning near his temples. Something about him felt familiar. Not from passenger list. Not from a previous flight. Somewhere else. Claire lowered her voice. This does not need to become difficult. Marcus glanced at the seat beside him, then at the aisle. It became difficult when a valid reservation stopped being enough. Richard shifted closer. Look, I do not want trouble. I have a meeting in Manhattan. Marcus turned toward him. So do I. Richard seemed surprised by the answer. Then you understand why everyone should cooperate. Cooperation requires a request, Marcus said. This is a decision that was made before anyone spoke to me. For the first time, Richard looked away. Claire reached for the tablet clipped beside the galley wall and opened the passenger record. Marcus watched her thumb move across the screen. His name appeared beside seat 2A. The reservation was confirmed. No upgrade error. No duplicate assignment. No equipment change. Claire saw all of it. Emily saw enough from several feet away to know there was no technical problem. Still, Claire locked the screen and turned back. Operational priority allows the crew to make adjustments. Marcus asked, "Where is that policy written?" Crew discretion is not something we debate with passengers. The cabin had grown quieter. A man in seat 1C lowered his newspaper. A woman across the aisle removed one earbud. Claire noticed the attention and straightened her shoulders. "Mr. Bennett, I am offering you transportation to your destination. You are choosing to make the seating arrangement an issue." Marcus looked at his watch again. 3 minutes and 26 seconds. "No," he said. "I'm choosing not to pretend the arrangement happened by accident." Emily felt the memory move closer. She had seen that face beside a company announcement, perhaps in an internal message sent during the ownership transition. She could not place the name, but the stillness in his expression made her uneasy. Claire turned toward the rear of the cabin and raised 2 fingers. Another flight attendant stepped forward. "We may need assistance," Claire said. Then she faced Marcus once more. "I am giving you one final opportunity to move voluntarily." Marcus placed one hand over the blue folder and looked at the crew gathering in the aisle. His voice stayed even. "Before you go any further, make sure every person involved understands exactly what they are approving." The second flight attendant stopped beside Claire and looked from Marcus to the boarding pass resting on the blue folder. His name was visible. His seat number was visible. Nothing about the document suggested confusion. Claire spoke first. "Mr. Bennett has declined a reasonable seating adjustment." The other attendant, a broad-shouldered man named Tyler Grant, glanced toward row 23. "The alternate seat is still available?" "Yes," Claire said. "Then we just need him to relocate." Marcus watched the exchange without moving. "Did you review the reservation?" he asked. Tyler looked at Claire instead of answering. She said the adjustment was approved. "That was not my question." The silence lasted only a second, but several passengers noticed it. Tyler shifted his attention to the tablet in Claire's hand. "Is there a duplicate assignment?" "No," Claire said. "Is there an equipment change?" "No." "Then why are we moving him?" Emily asked from the galley. The question came out more directly than she intended. Claire turned toward her. "Because Mr. Holbrook has priority status, and we are making an accommodation." Emily looked toward Richard. "Was he assigned another first-class seat?" Richard answered before Claire could. "My original seat was in row 4. A murmur moved through the cabin and disappeared. Claire tightened her grip on the tablet. "This is an internal service decision. We're not discussing passenger records in public." Marcus glanced at his watch. 2 minutes and 58 seconds remained. "Then discuss mine," he said. "Tell everyone why a confirmed passenger is being removed from a seat with no booking error, no safety issue, and no operational change." Claire's expression hardened beneath the professional smile. "Sir, you're not being removed from the flight. You're being reassigned to a middle seat 21 rows behind the one I purchased. You will still arrive in New York. That is not the standard you offered Mr. Holbrook." Richard looked down at the carpet. Tyler cleared his throat. "Maybe we should call the gate supervisor." Claire answered immediately. "There is no need. We have authority in the cabin." Her certainty filled the narrow aisle. She had made the decision, explained it, and gathered support. Now changing course would mean admitting the decision had never been necessary. Marcus recognized that kind of moment. He had seen executives protect bad numbers, managers defend failed plans, and entire departments preserve mistakes because correction felt more threatening than consequence. Claire faced Tyler. "Do you support the reassignment?" Tyler hesitated, then nodded. "Yes." She turned toward Emily. "Do you?" Emily looked at Marcus. The familiar face still pulled at her memory. She saw a conference room on a screen, a company message, a photograph beside words she had skimmed during a break. The answer was close, but Claire was waiting, and the entire cabin seemed to be waiting with her. "Emily?" Claire asked. Emily lowered her eyes. "Yes," she said quietly. Marcus heard the uncertainty. He did not comment on it. Claire turned back to him. "The cabin crew is in agreement." Marcus looked from Tyler to Emily, then toward the galley where another attendant had stopped listening to the boarding announcements. "All of you?" he asked. No one answered. Claire did. "Yes." Marcus nodded once, as though confirming a detail in a contract. "Then make sure that agreement is included in the record." Claire gave a short, humorless breath. "There is no record to create unless you continue refusing instructions. There is always a record." His voice remained calm. "The question is whether anyone checks it." The man in seat 1C folded his newspaper completely. Across the aisle, the woman with one earbud removed the other. Claire noticed the growing attention and stepped closer to Marcus. "You have 2 minutes remaining." Marcus looked at his watch. 2 minutes and 14 seconds. "Then your clock is running fast," he said. For the first time, Claire's smile disappeared. Claire held Marcus's gaze for one long second, then turned toward the front galley. "Get Captain Reyes," she said. Tyler hesitated. "Right now?" "Right now." The words were controlled, but the calm had become effort. Tyler stepped toward the cockpit and pressed the call button. Around them, the first-class cabin had gone almost completely silent. Even the soft music playing through the overhead system seemed too quiet to cover the tension. Marcus remained in seat 2A with one hand resting on the blue folder. The second hand on his watch moved past the 2-minute mark. Claire looked down at him. "You were given a simple option." "No," Marcus said. "I was given someone else's preference and told it was policy." "You are refusing a crew instruction." "I'm asking for the reason behind it." Claire lifted the tablet again. "The reason has already been explained." "Then explain why the system still lists me in this seat." She did not answer. Emily stood several feet away, watching the screen reflected faintly in the polished wall of the galley. Marcus's reservation remained unchanged. Confirmed passenger. Confirmed seat. No warning attached. No service note. Nothing that justified the scene unfolding in front of everyone. Richard shifted beside the aisle and checked his phone. "How much longer is this going to take?" he asked. Claire turned to him with immediate reassurance. "We are handling it, Mr. Holbrook." Marcus looked at Richard. "Your meeting must be important." Richard gave a small shrug. "They all are. Important enough to take a seat that was never yours." The question was quiet. Richard opened his mouth, then looked toward Claire. "I was told the airline arranged it." "And that was enough?" Marcus asked. Richard's expression tightened. "I did not make the decision." "No," Marcus said. "You only accepted the result." Before Richard could respond, the cockpit door opened. Captain Daniel Reyes stepped into the cabin, wearing a dark uniform jacket with 4 gold stripes on each shoulder. He was in his early 50s, composed and visibly irritated by the interruption. Tyler spoke to him in a low voice as they approached. Claire joined them before Daniel reached seat 2A. "The passenger has refused reassignment," she said. "We offered a seat in the main cabin, and he is challenging crew authority in front of other customers." Daniel looked at Marcus for the first time. "Mr. Bennett, is that accurate?" "Part of it." "Which part?" "I declined to surrender the seat listed on my boarding pass." Daniel held out his hand. Marcus gave him the pass. The captain checked the name, flight number, and seat assignment. His eyes paused on 2A. Then he returned it. "The crew has discretion to manage the cabin. Did you review the reservation record?" Marcus asked. Daniel glanced at Claire. "My senior purser reviewed it." "That was not my question." A faint change moved across the captain's face. "I trust my crew." Marcus nodded. "And if their judgment is wrong?" Daniel answered without looking at the tablet. "Then we address it later." Marcus looked at his watch. 1 minute and 18 seconds remained. Later is usually where institutions hide mistakes, he said. No one spoke. Emily looked at Marcus again, and the missing memory came closer. A company announcement. A photograph beside a new ownership message. A name she had not expected to hear on an ordinary flight. Daniel straightened. Mr. Bennett, I am giving you a final instruction. Accept the alternate seat or leave the aircraft. Claire folded her hands in front of her. Tyler looked toward the floor. Richard stood beside the seat he expected to receive. Marcus closed the blue folder, slipped the boarding pass inside, and rose slowly. For the first time since the confrontation began, Claire looked relieved. She believed the decision had finally settled. Marcus reached for his coat, then looked at each crew member in turn. Before I move, he said, I want to be clear. The captain supports this decision. Daniel answered, yes. The senior purser supports it. Claire said, yes. Marcus turned to Tyler. And you? Tyler hesitated, then nodded. Yes. His eyes moved to Emily. She said nothing. Claire looked at her. Emily, the young attendant swallowed. Yes. Marcus put on his coat. His watch showed 46 seconds remaining. Good, he said quietly. Now everyone understands exactly what they chose. Marcus stepped into the aisle with the blue folder tucked beneath one arm, and his coat settled across his shoulders. Claire moved aside, just enough to let him pass. For the first time since she approached seat 2A, the tension around her softened. She believed the problem had been solved. Richard placed one hand on the top of the seat and waited for Marcus to clear the row. Thank you, Claire said. Marcus stopped. For what? The question made her pause. For cooperating. I'm not cooperating, he said. I am documenting the outcome. Claire's expression tightened again. Daniel Reyes glanced toward the cockpit, where the departure clock continued to run. Mr. Bennett, we need to close the door. Marcus looked at his watch. 34 seconds remained. Then you should decide whether speed matters more than accuracy. Daniel answered with a tired breath. The decision has been made. Marcus nodded. Yes, it has. He stepped forward, but instead of continuing toward the open aircraft door, he stopped beside the galley and turned back toward the group. Richard was still waiting. Claire stood near seat 2A. Tyler remained a few feet behind her. Emily had not moved. One question, Marcus said. Claire folded her arms. We have already spent enough time on questions. Who authorized the reassignment? The cabin crew. Which member of the cabin crew? Claire hesitated. I made the initial service decision. And the others approved it. They supported it. Marcus looked at Daniel, including the captain. Daniel met his eyes. Yes. Marcus looked toward the passengers watching from both sides of the aisle. Nobody spoke. The woman across from seat 2 held her phone in her lap without touching the screen. The man in seat 1C kept his newspaper folded. The silence no longer belonged to Claire. Marcus turned toward Emily. Did you review the reservation yourself? Emily swallowed. I saw part of it. Did it show a duplicate booking? No. Claire stepped between them. This conversation is over. Marcus looked at her. Then why are you still explaining it? Claire opened her mouth, but no answer came. His watch reached 20 seconds. He slipped one hand into his coat pocket and touched his phone without removing it. I want the record to be clear, he said. My seat was valid. There was no equipment change. There was no safety concern. There was another first-class seat available for Mr. Holbrook. The crew decided to move me anyway. Daniel shifted his weight. You were offered transportation. That is not the same as honoring the agreement. Richard looked toward row 4, then back at seat 2A. His impatience had begun to fade into discomfort. Maybe I should just take my original seat, he said. Claire turned quickly. That will not be necessary. It might be easier, Richard replied. The arrangement has already been approved, Claire said. Marcus noticed the wording. Not requested. Not required. Approved. The decision now mattered more to her than the customer she claimed to protect. 10 seconds remained. Claire pointed toward the open door. Mr. Bennett, you need to leave the aircraft now. Marcus looked at his watch as the second hand moved. 9, 8, 7. Then he took out his phone. Claire gave a short laugh. Calling customer service will not change this. Marcus unlocked the screen. I'm not calling customer service. 6, 5, 4. He opened a secure message thread and typed 5 words. Flight 214. Initiate protocol 7. 3, 2, 1. He pressed send. A response appeared almost immediately. Confirmed. Marcus locked the phone and looked at Claire. Your 5 minutes are over, he said. Behind her, Richard lowered himself into seat 2A. Claire reached for the cabin door controls. At that exact moment, the tablet in her hand made a sharp tone. She looked down. The departure clearance had disappeared. In its place was a red notice she had never seen before. Executive review in progress. Aircraft hold authorized. Claire stared at the screen. Daniel stepped closer. What does that mean? She did not answer. Across the galley, Emily's tablet lit up with the same message, followed by a company photograph. She looked at the face on the screen, then at Marcus standing less than 6 feet away. This time, the memory arrived all at once. Emily stared at the photograph on her tablet, then lifted her eyes toward Marcus. The image showed the same composed face, the same gray at the temples, the same quiet expression that had seemed familiar from the moment Claire approached seat 2A. Beneath the photograph were the words she had skimmed during a rushed break 3 days earlier. Marcus Bennett, founder and chief executive officer of Aurelius Aviation Group, executive transition authority for Crestline Airways. Her hand tightened around the tablet. Claire, she said. Claire was still studying the red notice on her own screen. Not now. You need to look at this. I said not now. Daniel stepped closer and read the message over Claire's shoulder. Aircraft hold authorized by whom? Claire tapped the screen twice. Nothing changed. The departure clearance remained blocked. It might be a system error. Marcus stood beside the open door without speaking. Outside, a gate employee looked through the entrance and raised one hand, signaling that something had changed on the operations side. Richard remained in seat 2, but his briefcase was still standing in the aisle. The confidence he had carried onto the aircraft had begun to disappear. Emily crossed the galley and held out her tablet. This is him. Claire glanced at the photograph. Her eyes moved to the name, then back toward Marcus. For half a second, the certainty left her face. Then it returned. That could be anyone with the same name. Emily shook her head. It is the same photograph from the transition announcement. Tyler leaned over her shoulder. What transition announcement? The ownership change, Emily said. The one everyone was required to review. Claire lowered her voice. Do not spread unverified information in front of passengers. Marcus looked at her. You verified less before removing me from my seat. No one answered. Daniel turned toward Marcus. Mr. Bennett, are you connected to Aurelius Aviation Group? Marcus adjusted the edge of the blue folder beneath his arm. You had my name before you made your decision. That is not what I asked. It is the information you chose not to check. Daniel looked toward the cockpit. A call tone sounded from inside. Tyler moved to answer it, but the captain raised one hand. I will take it. He disappeared through the cockpit door. Claire watched him leave, then turned back to the tablet. She opened the crew access page and entered her identification number. A new message appeared. Access restricted during executive compliance review. This is not normal, she said. Emily looked at Marcus again. Mr. Bennett, I remember the video now. Claire gave her a warning look. Emily, he spoke about the company culture review. Emily continued. He said every customer decision had to be supported by policy and documented facts. The cabin was silent enough for passengers several rows away to hear her. Marcus did not confirm anything. He simply asked, Did you watch the entire video? Emily lowered her eyes. No, neither did most people, he said. There was no anger in his voice. That made the answer harder to dismiss. Richard stood from seat 2A. I think there has been a misunderstanding. Marcus looked at him. There was no misunderstanding. I mean about the seat. You knew it was assigned to someone else. Richard glanced toward Claire. I was told the airline had handled it. And when you saw how they handled it? Marcus asked. Richard looked down at his briefcase. Before he could answer, the cockpit door opened again. Daniel stepped out more slowly than before. His expression had changed. Operations says the aircraft cannot move, he said. Claire straightened. For how long? Until a regional executive arrives. Why would a regional executive come to the gate? Daniel looked toward Marcus, then back at Claire. Because the hold came from transition control. The words settled across the cabin. Emily already understood. Tyler was beginning to. Claire still resisted it. Then call them back, she said. Explain that we were managing a passenger issue. Daniel shook his head. They already have the passenger record. Claire looked at Marcus. For the first time, she did not speak immediately. Marcus checked his watch. Less than 90 seconds had passed since Protocol 7 began. Then another notification appeared on every crew tablet. Preserve all cabin records. Do not modify passenger notes. Await executive review. Claire read the message twice. Marcus met her eyes. Now, he said quietly, the record exists. The message remained on every crew tablet, as if the aircraft itself had stopped cooperating. Preserve all cabin records. Do not modify passenger notes. Await executive review. Claire read it again, then locked her screen and looked toward the open door. We need to keep this contained, she said. Tyler glanced at the passengers. It is already not contained. Several people in first class were watching openly now. No one spoke, but the silence had changed. It was no longer curiosity. It was recognition that something larger than a seat dispute had entered the cabin. Marcus stood beside the galley with a blue folder under one arm. He had not raised his voice once. He had not demanded an apology. He had not told anyone who he was. Yet the people who had spoken over him were now waiting for instructions from a system that had finally started listening. Emily looked down at the company announcement still open on her tablet. It says Mr. Bennett has a final transition authority over executive appointments, she said. Claire turned sharply. Stop reading internal material out loud. Everyone here was supposed to read it 3 days ago. That does not make this the time. Marcus looked at Emily. Actually, this is exactly the time people discover what they chose not to learn. Claire drew herself upright. Whatever your position is, the crew acted within its authority. Marcus met her eyes. Then the review should be simple. The answer gave her nowhere to move. Daniel stepped toward the front door and looked down the jet bridge. A gate supervisor was speaking urgently into a headset. Farther back, 2 airport employees were clearing a path. Someone is coming, Daniel said. Richard stood beside seat 2, no longer pretending to settle in. I should return to my original seat. Claire answered without looking at him. Please remain where you are until we receive direction. Richard frowned. That was not your position 5 minutes ago. Claire ignored him. Tyler looked toward Marcus. Mr. Bennett, was Protocol 7 created for situations like this? Marcus considered the question. It was created for situations where a customer decision cannot survive documentation. Tyler looked away. Emily asked, does it always lock the aircraft? Only when the people involved have authority over passenger movement. Daniel's expression tightened. That includes the captain. Yes, Marcus said, because trust without verification is still a decision. Daniel looked toward the cockpit, then back at Claire. For the first time, he seemed less concerned with departure time than with the exact words he had used. I trust my crew. The sentence now sat between them like a signed statement. A chime sounded from the galley phone. Claire reached for it, but the screen displayed restricted routing. Daniel picked up instead. Captain Reyes. He listened without speaking. His shoulders lowered slightly. Understood, he said. Then he ended the call. Regional operations is at the gate. Claire asked who. Daniel looked toward Marcus. Senior Vice President Thomas Hale. Tyler blinked. He is based in Dallas. He arrived in Atlanta this morning for the transition meetings, Daniel said. Marcus said nothing. The sound of quick footsteps moved closer along the jet bridge. A moment later, a tall man in a dark gray suit appeared at the aircraft door. Thomas Hale entered with an airport manager and a woman carrying a secured company tablet. He looked first at Daniel, then Claire, then the boarding pass visible inside Marcus's open folder. Finally, he faced Marcus. Mr. Bennett, he said, I apologize that this reached executive review before anyone corrected it. The cabin went completely still. Claire stared at Thomas. You know him? Thomas turned toward her. Everyone in a leadership position at Crestline was required to know him. Richard stepped away from C2A. Emily lowered her tablet. Tyler said nothing. Thomas looked at the crew. I need one clear answer before we begin. Who approved removing Mr. Bennett from his assigned seat? Claire opened her mouth. Daniel answered first. All of us. Marcus watched the words settle over the same people who had agreed so quickly only minutes earlier. Then Thomas nodded toward the woman with the secure tablet. Open the record, he said. We will review every decision in order. Thomas Hale stepped aside as the woman with the secured tablet opened the passenger record. Her name badge identified her as Linda Foster from Corporate Compliance. She did not look at Marcus first. She looked at the data. Seat 2A was assigned to Mr. Bennett at the time of purchase, she said. The reservation was confirmed 43 days ago. There was no duplicate booking, no aircraft substitution, and no safety-related reassignment. Claire folded her hands in front of her. The decision was based on service priority. Linda looked up. Show me the policy. Claire hesitated. Senior crew members have discretion. That is not a policy citation. The cabin remained silent. Richard stood in the aisle beside the seat he had accepted only minutes earlier. He no longer looked impatient. He looked like a man realizing that the convenience offered to him had come with questions he should have asked. Thomas turned toward Daniel. Captain Reyes, when were you informed? After Mr. Bennett declined the alternate seat. Did you review the passenger record? Daniel paused. I reviewed the boarding pass. Did you review the reason for reassignment? I relied on the senior purser's judgment. Thomas nodded once. And when Mr. Bennett asked whether that judgment could be wrong, Daniel looked toward Marcus. I told that we would address it later. Linda entered the statement into the record. The small sound of her typing seemed unusually loud. Claire stepped forward. This is being treated as though we removed him from the flight. We offered him another seat. Marcus spoke before Thomas could answer. A middle seat in row 23. Linda checked the cabin map. That is correct. While Mr. Holbrook had a confirmed first-class seat in row 4, Marcus added. Linda looked at Richard. Is that accurate? Richard cleared his throat. Yes. Did you request seat 2A? No. Claire turned toward him. You told the gate team you preferred a window seat. Richard shook his head. I said I preferred one if available. I did not ask anyone to remove another passenger. The distinction changed the room. Tyler looked at Claire. Emily lowered her eyes. Thomas asked, Who proposed moving Mr. Bennett? Claire answered after several seconds. I did. Based on what? Mr. Holbrook is one of our highest status customers. And Mr. Bennett? Claire looked toward Marcus, but the answer was already clear. She had not checked. Linda moved to the next screen. The cabin record shows the reassignment request was entered manually 3 minutes after Mr. Bennett boarded. Claire said, That is correct. The reason field says customer experience adjustment. Yes. There is no note stating that the assigned passenger agreed. Claire did not respond. Marcus remained near the galley, still holding the blue folder. He had imagined moments like this during the transition review, but not because he expected to be involved personally. He had warned the board that culture was revealed in ordinary decisions, especially when no executive appeared to be watching. Now the principal stood 6 feet from seat 2A with names, timestamps, and witnesses attached to it. Thomas looked toward Emily. You questioned the decision. Emily nodded. At first, then you approved it. Her voice became quieter. Yes. Why? She looked at Claire. Because everyone else had already decided. Marcus studied her for a moment. That is how bad decisions become institutional, he said. Not because everyone believes them, but because uncertainty stays silent. Emily accepted the words without defending herself. Linda closed the first record and opened the crew communication log. There is one more issue, she said. Claire looked at the screen. What issue? Linda turned the tablet so Thomas could see it. The service note was edited after Mr. Bennett refused to move. Daniel stepped closer. Edited how? Linda read the original entry, then the revised one. The first described a voluntary customer accommodation. The second described a non-compliant passenger delaying departure. Thomas looked at Claire. Who changed the language? No one answered. Linda pointed to the identification number attached to the edit. Claire's identification number. For the first time since entering the cabin, Thomas's expression lost its neutrality. That, he said, is no longer a seating judgment. That is a record integrity issue. Claire looked at the identification number on Linda's tablet, as though the digits might change if she waited long enough. They did not. The edit remained attached to her account, marked with the exact time and the exact language she had entered. I updated the note to reflect what happened, she said. Linda kept her voice neutral. The original note described a service adjustment. The revised note described a non-compliant passenger causing a delay. Those are not the same event. Claire turned toward Marcus. He refused a crew instruction. After you reassigned a valid seat without policy support, Thomas said. That context matters. Daniel looked at the screen. Was the note changed before or after I came out of the cockpit? Linda checked the timestamp. 27 seconds after. The captain's expression tightened. I was not told that. Claire faced him. You knew he was refusing to move. I knew what you told me, Daniel said. That is different. Tyler stood near the galley with his arms at his sides, no longer trying to appear uninvolved. Did the edit trigger Protocol 7? He asked. Marcus answered quietly. No. Everyone looked at him. Protocol 7 was already active, he continued. The edit only preserved the reason it needed to exist. Claire's eyes moved from Marcus to Thomas. So this was a test. Marcus shook his head. No, a test is controlled. This was a real decision involving a real customer. He paused. The fact that I happened to be the customer does not make the decision more serious. It only made it visible. The words settled over the cabin. Several passengers looked down, not because they disagreed, but because the point had moved beyond a single seat. Linda opened another section of the record. The cabin audio log confirms that Mr. Bennett asked 3 times for the basis of the reassignment. No policy was provided. Claire said, We do not normally debate operational decisions. Then operational decisions need stronger documentation, Thomas replied. Richard remained beside row 2, his briefcase now resting against his leg. For whatever it is worth, he said, I should not have taken the seat. Marcus looked at him. Why not? Richard seemed surprised by the question. Because it was yours. You knew that before you sat down. Richard nodded slowly. Yes. Then the problem was not information. Richard looked towards seat 2A. No, it was convenience, Marcus said. Richard did not argue. Emily watched the exchange with a quiet expression. She understood now that no one in the cabin had lacked enough facts to pause. They had lacked the willingness to challenge the person who sounded most certain. A new tone sounded from Linda's tablet. She read the message, then looked at Thomas. Corporate Legal has completed the preliminary preservation review. Thomas asked, findings? The seat record was valid. The reassignment lacked written policy support. The passenger note was materially altered after the dispute began. The captain approved removal without reviewing the underlying reservation history. Daniel lowered his eyes. Linda continued. The review recommends immediate removal of all directly involved crew members from operational duty pending formal investigation. Claire's face changed. All of us. Thomas did not answer immediately. He looked toward Marcus. Mr. Bennett, given your position, Corporate Legal is requesting your direction. For the first time, everyone in the cabin waited for Marcus to decide what happened next. Claire looked at him with an expression that held fear, disbelief, and the beginning of an argument. Marcus stood in the same place where he had sent 5 words less than 5 minutes earlier. He could have ended the matter with one sentence. Instead, he looked at Linda's tablet and said, I will not decide their consequences. Thomas raised an eyebrow. Then who will? Marcus nodded toward the record. The policy will. Claire took a step forward. Mr. Bennett, I can explain. You already did, Marcus said. Every explanation is in the record. Linda looked at Thomas, then opened the company accountability standard. Outside the aircraft, another crew had arrived at the gate. Their uniforms were visible through the open door. Thomas read the first line, and the remaining certainty left Claire's face. Pending review, he said, the operating crew is relieved of duty effective immediately. For several seconds, no one moved. The replacement crew waited beyond the open door, while the original crew remained inside the cabin, caught between the authority they had exercised and the policy now examining how they had used it. Thomas Hale read the accountability standard from Linda's tablet in a measured voice. Any employee involved in an unsupported passenger removal, inaccurate service documentation, or operational escalation without verified cause may be removed from duty pending formal review. Claire looked toward Marcus. You know this is excessive. Marcus did not answer immediately. He looked past her towards seat 2A, where Richard's briefcase still rested beside the armrest. What part is excessive? He asked. Relieving an entire crew because of one seating decision. It was not one decision. Claire crossed her arms. Then what was it? You saw a valid reservation and ignored it. Tyler accepted your explanation without checking. Emily questioned the decision, then approved it anyway. Captain Reyes trusted the report without reviewing the facts. Then the record was changed after I refused. His voice remained calm. Those were separate decisions. Daniel stood near the cockpit door. He is right. Claire turned toward him. You approved the removal. I did, Daniel said. And I approved it without enough information. Tyler looked at the floor. Emily held her tablet against her chest. Thomas nodded toward the replacement crew. Captain Reyes, you will transfer the aircraft records and operational status to the incoming captain. Your access remains active only for that purpose. Daniel removed his flight cap and held it beneath one arm. Understood. He walked toward the cockpit without argument. The gesture carried more weight than any protest could have. Claire watched him leave, then faced Thomas. I have worked for this airline for 14 years. That history will be included in the review, Thomas said. So will today. My record is excellent. Linda looked down at the tablet. Your record is not being erased. It is being considered alongside the documented events on this flight. Claire's eyes moved toward the passengers. The same people she had tried to manage now sat quietly as witnesses. No one appeared pleased. No one applauded. The cabin had become too serious for celebration. Richard picked up his briefcase and stepped away from seat 2A. I will return to row 4, he said. Thomas looked at him. That is where your confirmed reservation remains. Richard nodded. Before walking away, he stopped beside Marcus. I should have spoken sooner. Marcus looked at him. Why did you not? Richard took a moment before answering. Because the outcome benefited me. Marcus nodded once. That answer is more useful than an excuse. Richard returned to his original seat without another word. Tyler approached Linda. Do we leave now? You will collect your personal belongings and report to the operations office, she said. Do not access or alter any passenger notes. Understood. Emily remained still. Claire noticed. You agreed with us, she said. Emily looked at her. I agreed because I was afraid to be the only person disagreeing. And now you're acting like you knew better. Emily lowered her voice. I did know better. That is the part one have to answer for. Marcus watched her without interruption. The honesty did not remove responsibility, but it changed the way the truth entered the room. Thomas turned toward Marcus. The aircraft can depart once the transfer is complete. The replacement crew is ready. Marcus looked at the clock above the galley. The flight was now 14 minutes behind schedule. Then continue the operation, he said. Do not delay the passengers longer than necessary. Claire stared at him. After all of this, you are still taking the flight? Marcus looked towards seat 2A. It is the seat I purchased. She seemed to search for something else to say, but the authority she had carried into the confrontation was gone. Not because Marcus had taken it from her, but because the record had measured it against the facts. Thomas stepped toward the aisle. The formal review begins this afternoon. Until then, all 4 crew members are removed from active duty. Claire looked toward the open door, where the replacement senior purser waited. Then she removed her company badge and placed it carefully on the galley counter. Marcus said nothing. He did not need to. The system she had trusted to support her decision had finally required her to explain it. Claire stood beside the galley counter with her company badge resting where she had placed it. For 14 years, that small piece of metal had opened employee doors, confirmed her authority, and identified her as the person responsible for maintaining order in the cabin. Now it sat beneath the overhead lights while another senior purser stepped onto the aircraft and introduced herself to Thomas Hale. Her name was Rachel Monroe. She reviewed the transfer summary, checked the cabin status, and then looked toward the passengers. Thank you for your patience, she said. We will complete departure procedures as quickly as possible. Her voice was calm, but unlike Claire's earlier certainty, it carried no assumption that calm alone made a decision correct. Daniel returned from the cockpit with a printed transfer sheet. The incoming captain, Samuel Ortiz, followed behind him. Aircraft systems are normal, Daniel said. Departure clearance remains pending until the crew change is complete. Samuel accepted the document. Understood. Their exchange was professional and brief. Daniel did not defend himself. He did not blame Claire. He signed the transfer record, removed his identification card from the cockpit access clip, and handed it to Linda Foster. I should have reviewed the reservation history, he said. Linda entered the statement into the record. That will be included. Tyler collected his jacket and personal bag from the rear galley. As he passed Marcus, he slowed. I thought supporting the senior crew member was the same as doing my job. Marcus looked at him. Support is not the same as surrendering judgment. Tyler nodded. I understand that now. Understanding after the outcome is easy, Marcus said. The responsibility is remembering it before the next decision. Tyler accepted the answer and continued toward the door. Emily remained near the front galley. She had not collected her belongings. Her eyes moved between Marcus and the photograph still visible on her tablet. Mr. Bennett, she said, I want to apologize. Marcus waited. I recognized that something was wrong before I knew who you were, she continued. I saw the reservation. I knew there was no duplicate seat. I asked one question, but when everyone looked at me, I agreed anyway. Claire turned toward her. You are making this sound simpler than it was. Emily looked at Claire. The seat was his. The record showed that. We had enough information. Claire looked away. Thomas stepped closer to Marcus. Corporate legal has completed the initial determination. Marcus said nothing. The finding confirms an unsupported reassignment, failure to verify customer records, improper escalation, and an inaccurate service note. Thomas glanced toward Claire. The formal employment review will continue, but the record integrity violation requires immediate termination of senior purser duties under the transition accountability policy. Claire's face became still. Termination? Effective today, Thomas said. Human Resources will meet with you after the operational review. For several seconds, she said nothing. Then she looked at Marcus. You said the policy would decide. It did. You could change it. That would make the policy another preference, Marcus replied. Rules only mean something when they apply during difficult moments. Claire looked toward seat 2A, then toward the passengers who had witnessed every step. I did not think I was doing anything wrong. Marcus answered quietly. Most damaging decisions do not begin with someone announcing bad intentions. They begin with an assumption that never gets questioned. Claire's eyes lowered to the badge on the counter. Linda picked it up and placed it in a clear evidence envelope with the transfer documents. The action was careful, not dramatic. That made it final. Thomas looked toward Emily and Tyler. Both of you remain suspended pending review. Captain Reyes will undergo a command evaluation before returning to flight duty. Daniel nodded. Emily asked, Will I have a chance to explain? Yes, Thomas said, but the explanation will be considered alongside what the record shows. The replacement crew moved through the cabin, checking seats and restoring the departure process. Rachel stopped beside 2A and looked at Marcus. Mr. Bennett, your assigned seat is ready. Marcus opened the blue folder, removed his boarding pass, and looked at the number printed on it. Nothing had changed. Seat 2, it had always been his. He stepped toward the row as Claire, Daniel, Tyler, and Emily prepared to leave the aircraft. No one applauded. No one celebrated. The cabin simply watched as the facts returned the room to where it should have been from the beginning. Marcus returned to seat 2A and placed the blue folder across his knees, exactly where it had rested before the confrontation began. Rachel Monroe checked the overhead compartment, confirmed the aisle was clear, and moved toward the front galley as the replacement crew completed the final cabin inspection. Outside the window, the morning light had shifted across the wing. Ground vehicles moved below with the same steady rhythm as before, but inside the aircraft, every person understood that something permanent had changed. Claire, Daniel, Tyler, and Emily stood near the open door while Linda Foster completed the transfer paperwork. Thomas Hale reviewed each name, each role, and each action already preserved in the record. Senior Purser Claire Whitmore, he said. Employment terminated effective immediately under the record integrity provision. Claire looked at the floor for a moment, then toward Marcus. 14 years, she said quietly. I gave this airline 14 years. Marcus met her eyes. Then you knew how much trust came with the position. She did not answer. Thomas continued. Captain Daniel Reyes, removed from command, pending formal evaluation and executive review. Daniel nodded. Understood. Tyler Grant and Emily Carter, suspended from active duty, pending investigation and retraining determination. Tyler accepted the decision without protest. Emily held her tablet against her chest and looked toward Marcus. I should have spoken before everyone agreed, she said. Marcus gave a small nod. Remember that when the next room gets quiet. Linda sealed the final documents and handed them to Thomas. The preliminary review is complete. Thomas looked toward the replacement crew. Release the aircraft for departure. Rachel confirmed the order, and the red restriction disappeared from the cabin tablets. A green departure status returned. The entire process had taken less than 5 minutes from the moment Marcus activated Protocol 7. Yet the consequences would extend far beyond the aircraft. Thomas stepped beside Seat 2A. Corporate Compliance is recommending a system-wide review of premium cabin reassignment practices. Marcus opened the blue folder. How many flights? 186 flights from the last 90 days were flagged for manual seat changes involving customer status. Marcus looked at the number printed on the report. Review all of them. Thomas nodded. Every record, every decision. That will involve several regional offices. Then several regional offices will learn from it. Thomas paused. Public Relations will ask whether we are releasing a statement. Marcus turned one page. Release the policy changes, not my name. You do not want the company to explain what happened. The company should explain what it will correct. Thomas considered the answer, then nodded. Across the aisle, the woman who had removed her earbuds earlier leaned toward Marcus. Mr. Bennett, she said, I'm glad someone finally listened. Marcus looked at her. Listening should not depend on knowing who someone is. The woman sat back quietly. Richard returned from row 4 and stopped near seat 2A. I owe you an apology, he said. Marcus waited. I saw that the seat belonged to you, Richard continued. I told myself it was the airline's decision, so it was not my responsibility. And now? Marcus asked. Richard looked toward the empty galley where Claire had stood. Now I understand that benefiting from a wrong decision does not make me separate from it. Marcus nodded once. That is a useful place to begin. Richard returned to his assigned seat. The aircraft door closed. Rachel completed the safety announcement, and the cabin settled into a quiet different from the one before. It was not the silence of people waiting for conflict. It was the silence of people considering what they had witnessed. As the aircraft pushed back from the gate, Marcus turned to the first page of the document in his folder. The heading read, Restoring Trust at Crestline Airways. Beneath it, one sentence had been underlined in blue ink. Culture is revealed by what people do when they believe leadership is not watching. Marcus read the sentence once, then looked out at the runway. The aircraft began moving toward departure, carrying a new crew, a corrected record, and a lesson that had started with one seat but would not end there. The aircraft climbed above Atlanta and leveled beneath a clear morning sky. The seatbelt sign remained illuminated while the city narrowed into roads, rooftops, and silver lines far below. Marcus rested the blue folder on the tray table and turned to the next page. Around him, the cabin settled into the ordinary sounds of flight. Air moved through the vents. Cups shifted softly on trays. Passengers returned to books, messages, and unfinished conversations. Yet the atmosphere carried a different weight. No one had forgotten what happened at the gate. Rachel Monroe moved through first class with measured attention, confirming names before offering service and checking each request against the record in her tablet. When she reached Marcus, she paused. Mr. Bennett, may I bring you anything? Coffee, please. Black. Of course. She glanced at the folder. Thomas asked me to tell you that the system-wide review has already begun. Marcus looked up. How many records have been assigned? All 186. Good. Rachel nodded and continued down the aisle. Across from him, the woman who had watched the confrontation earlier opened her laptop but did not begin typing. After a moment, she looked over. May I ask you something? Marcus closed the folder. Yes. Would the same review have happened if you were not the chief executive officer? The question was direct. Marcus considered it before answering. It should have. But would it? He looked toward the front of the cabin. That is the question the company has to answer now. The woman nodded slowly. Most people never get to see the system correct itself. Then the correction is incomplete, Marcus said. Fair treatment cannot depend on the customer having enough authority to force a review. Rachel returned with coffee and set the cup carefully beside the folder. Thank you, Marcus said. You are welcome. As she stepped away, the flight crossed through a thin layer of clouds. Sunlight filled the cabin for several seconds, bright against the polished armrests and window frames. Marcus opened the report again. A section titled Passenger Trust Measures listed proposed changes that had been waiting for approval. Mandatory documentation for premium seat reassignments. Automatic review when a valid reservation was overridden. Independent escalation when crew authority affected a passenger without written cause. He took out a pen and marked all three. Then he added one sentence beneath them. Every customer deserves the protection of a record that cannot be rewritten by convenience. His phone vibrated once with a secure message from Thomas. Preliminary action confirmed. Executive review scheduled. Marcus read it, then placed the phone face down. He did not feel victorious. The morning had not given him anything he wanted. It had revealed something the company needed to see. Power, he had learned long ago, mattered most when it prevented the next person from standing alone in the same room. 2 hours later, the aircraft began its descent toward New York. Buildings appeared beneath the clouds, then highways, bridges, and neighborhoods stretching toward the horizon. Richard remained in row 4 and did not approach again. Emily, Claire, Tyler, and Daniel were already in separate review meetings in Atlanta. Their decisions would be examined without anger and without excuses. Facts would remain facts. Responsibility would remain individual. When the landing announcement ended, Rachel stopped beside seat 2A. Mr. Bennett, we will be on the ground in about 20 minutes. Marcus nodded. Thank you. She hesitated. For what it is worth, the replacement crew reviewed the entire transition briefing before departure. A faint smile touched Marcus's face. Then something changed before we even left the gate. Rachel continued forward. Marcus looked out the window as the aircraft descended over the city. The blue folder remained open on his lap. At the top of the final page was the same sentence he had underlined earlier. Culture is revealed by what people do when they believe leadership is not watching. Beneath it, he wrote one final line. Leadership is what changes after the truth is seen. He closed the folder as the wheels approached the runway. No announcement named him. No passenger aplaudid. No one needed to. The seat beside the window remained exactly where it had always been, and Marcus remained exactly who he had been before anyone knew his title. The difference was that now the record knew the truth, the institution had answered for it, and the next person who boarded Crestline Airways would have a better chance of being treated with dignity before anyone asked who they were.